Hey, it's Medium Jenny Lee. Sorry it's been so long since I have made one of these Raw Contact Volume 2 session videos. It's been about 2 months, but you know, life. So we're trying to get back into the swing of things with our Raw book, and today we're going to be going over session 62. So that makes this the 7th video of the new series for the second book. All right, session 62. This is July 13th of 1981. I am not quite born yet. Give me another month and some odd days. Ra starts out saying, "Before we begin, may we request that a circle be walked about the instrument, Carla, and let then each of the supporting group expel breath forcibly approximately 2 1/2 feet above the instrument's head. The circle then again being walked about the instrument." And then there's a note that says this was done as directed. Ra says, "We appreciate your kind cooperation. Please recheck the alignment of perpendicularity and we will begin." Note, this was done as directed. Now Ra says, "I am Ra. We communicate now." What the hell was that all about? Don says, "Could you tell me what was wrong or what caused the necessity for the rewalking of the circle and the purpose of expelling of breath?" This instrument was under specific psychic attack at the time of the beginning of the working. Yikes. There was a slight irregularity in the words verbalized by your sound complex vibratory mechanisms in the protective walking of the circle. So it sounds like they've been doing the walking of the circle before they get started every time, but this time Carla's under psychic attack from, not so nice entities, and somebody didn't say something correctly. The complex vibratory mechanisms would be our speaking, our voice box. Into this opening came this entity and began to work upon the instrument. Now in trance state, as you would call it, this instrument was being quite adversely affected in physical complex distortions. Thus, the circle was properly walked. The breath of righteousness expelled the thought form, and the circle again walked. So the breath expelled the thought form. And the thought form. Talking about the thought form there for a second. So the nasty negative entity that's trying to get to Carla is a thought form, which is just a thought that's taken form. Which is interesting because I just did a small group medium reading Saturday night, which today is Monday, and we had a negative thought form that showed up. Interesting. Don asks, what was the nature of the thought form or its affiliation? Ra says the thought form was of Orion affiliation. So just a reminder, since it's been a while, unless you're watching these in order or you know exactly what's going on, I think I need a reminder at this point. The Orion Group is a group of negative entities who are of service of self type, who are trying to basically enslave other people and other beings because that's their agenda. Don asks, was the attack successful in creating any further distortion of the instrument's physical complex? And Ra says this is correct. What was the nature of the distortion? Don wants to know. This thought form sought to put an end to the instrument's incarnation by working with the renal distortions, which, although corrected upon time-space, are vulnerable to one which knows the way to separate time-space molding and time-space distortions, which are being unmolded vulnerable as before the shall we say healing. So I'm like, what? So I mean, basically the nasty little critter guy, whatever he was, is trying to kill Carla by going through the renal, I would imagine, glands system. I mean, what the hell? Don says, what detrimental effect has been done? There will be some discomfort. However, we were fortunate in that this instrument was very open to us and well tuned. Had we not been able to reach the instrument and instruct you, the instrument's physical vehicle would soon be unviable. Whoa. So the body wouldn't have even been functional anymore. Like, what the hell? Isn't that absolutely terrifying? I mean, Ra's just saying that if they weren't able to come through and tell Don and Jim what to do, that Carla would have died. Like, what the hell? Ay, ay, ay. Will there be any lasting effect from this attack as far as the instrument's physical vehicle is concerned? This is difficult to say. We are of the opinion that no lasting harm or distortion will occur. Thank goodness. And I just want to pause here for a second because I have spent a lot of time picking on them, Don and Jim, about how often they ask about Carla's health and the way that she's working and functioning. And because even Ra sometimes gets a little flustered with them about how many times they ask. But with this information, I think it's very valid and important that they are asking on a regular basis every time, sometimes multiple times, because that got really serious really fast. The healer was strong, and the bonds taking effect and the remolding of these renal distortions were effective. Hallelujah. It is at this point a question of two forms of the leavings of what you may call a spell or a magic working. The healer's distortions versus the attempt at Orion distortions. The healer's distortions full of love. The Orion's distortions also pure in separation. It seems that all is well except for some possible discomfort which may be attempted if persistent. So there was some sort of healer activity going on here, and I don't remember if Don asks specifically who the healer is. And, is it Don and Jim doing the breath work, or was it Ra, or was it something else? And because I mentioned that we had a negative thought form show up in my small group medium reading, I would like to say that it was not of the Orion Group, and it was just a little critter that was manifested through someone's negative emotions and then given form. And it was just a very piddly little thing. It wasn't this crazy Orion Group entities that are trying to kill people. So good for us. Okay. Don asked next, was the opening that was made in the protective circle planned to be made by the Orion entity? Was it a specific planned attempt to make an opening, or was this something that had just happened by accident? This entity was, as your people put it, looking for a target of opportunity. The missed word was a chance occurrence and not a planned one. So they accidentally left one word out of their ritual of protection for Carla, and that's why this thing was able to come in. We might suggest in the, shall we say, future as you measure time, space-time, as you begin a working, be aware that the instrument is likely being watched for any opportunity. Thus, if the circle is walked with some imperfection, it is well to immediately repeat. The expelling of breath is also appropriate. Always to the left. Would you expand on what you just said about the expelling of the breath? The repetition of that performed well at this working is advisable if the circle is walked in less than appropriate configuration. But you have mentioned the expelling of the breath to the left. Would you tell me what you meant by that? It is as you have just accomplished, the breath being sent above the instrument's head from the right side to its left. Is there anything we can do for the instrument after she comes out of trance to help her recover from this attack? There is little to be done. You may watch to see if distortions persist and see that the appropriate healers are brought into contact with the mind-body-spirit complex in the event that difficulty persists. It may not. This battle is even now being accomplished. Each may counsel the instrument to continue its work as outlined previously. So remember, mind-body-spirit complex is just the person. Talking about the three aspects of what makes up a person: their mind, their body, and their spirit. I also would like to stop here for a second and share an experience that I think is relevant to this. So before I start my spiritual work as a medium, psychic, what have you, I have my own set of rituals, and I won't go into all of them right here, right now, because we're not talking about all of that. But I do want to talk about one part of my ritual that I do, and I take sage and Palo Santo, and I go around my space in a circle, and I go counterclockwise around this space because this is where I work. And I've noticed that if I don't complete the circle all the way, that I will have, probably from my higher self, a little nudge, a little tap, a little something that says, hey, you need to finish the circle. And I do. So, it's that little intuitive listening to your gut or whatever sense that something wasn't done correctly. That happens to me too. So I think it parallels this situation that they had with Carla on this specific day. They didn't complete their protection circle correctly. They left out one word out of the things that they normally say, and it didn't seal the protection. And I just thought it was interesting that I get that little intuitive nudge that I need to make sure that I seal my protective circle too. And I also would like to mention that they're completely different things. The way that I do my protective stuff is not the same way that they're doing Carla's protective stuff. So everybody's protective rituals can be different. It's just completing them in the way that it makes you feel that you are protected. It's putting that intention and that belief in what you're doing. Because all of the stuff that they do for Carla is so Carla feels protected, not because it's the only way that you have to do it. Who would the appropriate healers be? Okay, here we go. We're getting into healers here. And how would we bring them in contact with the instrument? There are 4. Difficulty being at all noticed as bodily distortion, the one known as Don and the one known as Jim may work upon the instrument's bodily complex as by means of the practices which are developing in each entity. Ha! So Don and Jim are healers for her. Good job, fellows. Given persistence of distortion, the one known as Stuart shall be seen. Given the continued difficulty past the point of one of your cycles called the fortnight, the one known as Douglas shall be seen. I don't know who Stuart and Douglas are, but it looks like Don's getting ready to ask. Does the instrument know who these people are? Because Don apparently does not know. Stuart and Douglas, I don't know who they are. This is correct. So Carla knows who they are. Is that the sum total of what we can do to aid the instrument? This is correct. We may note that the harmonies and loving social intercourse which prevails habitually in this group creates a favorable environment for each of you to do your work. So because they are harmonious together and they love each other, then all is favorable. Don asks, what priority does the Orion Group place upon the reduction of effectiveness or elimination of effectiveness of this group with respect to activities on planet Earth at this time? Ra says, this group, as all positive channels and supporting groups, is a greatly high priority with the Orion Group. This instrument's bodily distortions are its most easily unbound or unloosened. Distortion dissolving the mind-body-spirit complex if the Orion Group is successful. This particular group, having learned to be without serious chinks, may we say, in mind and spirit complex vibratory patterns. In other channels, other chinks may be more in evidence. So it's just because Carla's got issues with her body. Physically, she's got weakened things with her physical body. So then the Orion Group sees them. They're like a beacon of light out shining out into the universe. And they're like, hey, we got to go take care of that because we can't be having this. And the easiest way for them to unravel it is through Carla's physical body, because her physicalness is not the greatest. But I think it's important to note that if the Orion Group was going to go try to harass other people, they would look for their weaknesses too, and it wouldn't necessarily be the same. I'll make this statement and you can correct me. The Orion Group has, as an objective, the bringing of service to self-polarized entities to harvest as great a harvest as possible. This harvest will build their potential or their ability to do work in consciousness as given by the distortion of the law of one, called the law of squares or doubling. Is this correct? Ross says this is correct. So what the hell are they talking about? It's been a while since we've talked about harvesting or this law of squares or doubling. So the harvest is when a group of individuals is ready to move up to the next density. So like we're in the third density, we're supposed to be moving up to the fourth density, which I know that there's lots of woo-woo people out there who think that it's the fifth density, but we're going through the raw information and that's what Ra is saying. So whatever you believe is cool. We're just talking about what Ra is talking about. Ra says we're in the third dimension, we're in the third density, we're trying to move to the fourth density. So the harvest is when people are ready to move up. And the law of squares or the law of doubling is, if I remember correctly, because it's been a long time since there's been a talk of that. Well, the example they gave in the first book was, let's say there's 5 people on planet Earth that are calling out to the service to others, people for help, then it would have the intensity of it being doubled. So instead of it seeming like there's 5 people, it would feel more like there's 10 people. But of course, you could use that with any number, Are there other groups of those who are on the service to self path joined with those from the Orion constellation? For instance, those of Southern Cross, are they presently working for the same type of harvest with respect to Earth? These you mention of Southern Cross are members of the Orion Group. It is not, shall we say, according to understood wording, that a group from various galaxies should be named by one. However, these planetary social memory complexes of the so-called Orion constellation have the upper hand and thus rule the other members. You must recall that the negative thinking there is always in the pecking order, shall we say, and the power against power in separation. So just a little side note there too, talking about the harvest. So as you move up through the densities, You can either be harvestable for service to others or service to self. So, of course, the Orion Group people are considered service to self. Don asks, by creating as large a harvest as possible of negatively oriented entities from Earth, then the social memory complex of the Orion Group gains in strength. Am I correct in assuming this strength then is in the total strength of the complex, the pecking order remaining approximately the same, and those at the top gaining strength with respect to the total strength of the social memory complex? Is this correct? This is correct. To the stronger go the greater shares of polarity. So, yeah, the people at the top have the most. Oh, that sounds familiar, doesn't it? I see a few parallels between the Orion Group and what's happening on our planet at this time. Very interesting. Then Don asks, are we talking about the fourth density group now? Ra says, these are fourth and a few fifth density members of the Orion Group. Then is the top of the pecking order fifth density? Correct. What does the leader, the one at the very top of the pecking order in fifth density Orion, have as an objective? I would like to understand his philosophy with respect to his objectives, plans for what we might call the future of his future. Or his future. The thinking will not be so strange to you. Therefore, we may speak through the densities as your planet has some negatively oriented action in sway at this space-time nexus. I wrote no doc because that's what I was just talking about. This all seems real familiar. The early fifth density negative entity is oriented towards maintaining cohesion as a social memory complex in its free will. Determine that the path to wisdom lies in manipulation, the exquisite propriety of all other selves. It then, by virtue of its abilities and wisdom, is able to be the leader of fourth density beings, which are upon the road to wisdom by exploring the dimensions of love of self and understanding of self. These fifth density entities see the creation of that which shall be put in order. Dealing with a plane such as this third density at this harvesting, it will see the mechanism of the call more clearly and have much less distortion towards plunder or manipulation by thoughts which are given to negatively oriented entities. Although in allowing this to occur, the sending less wise entities to do this work, any successes rebound to the leaders. The fifth density sees the difficulties posed by the light, and in this way directs entities of this vibration to the seeking of targets of opportunity such as this one, which is their group. If fourth density temptations towards distortion of ego, etc. are not successful, the fifth density entity then thinks in terms of the removal of light. Then Don asks, when the Orion entity who waits us, seeking the opportunity to attack, is with us here, can you describe the method of his coming here, what he looks like, and how he waits? I know that this isn't too important, but it might give me a little insight into what we are talking about. Yeah. Us humans, we want a title, a name, a category, and a description. And other beings in the universe are like, you don't need any of that stuff, but we like it. Us humans, we like these things. Fifth density entities are very light beings, although they do have the type of physical vehicle which you understand. Fifth density entities are very fair to look upon in your standard of beauty. Interesting. The thought is what is sent for a fifth density entity is likely to have mastered this technique of discipline. There is little or no means of perceiving such an entity, for unlike fourth density entities, the fifth density entity walks with light feet. Do they mean light feet as in not heavy, or light as in actual light? I wonder. This instrument was aware of extreme coldness in the past diurnal cycle, which is the day cycle, and spent much more time than your normal attitudes would imagine to be appropriate and what seemed to each of you an extremely warm climate. This was not perceived by the instrument, but the drop in subjective temperature is a sign of presence of a negative or non-positive or draining entity. That is a very important piece of information. A sudden drop in temperature can be a sign of a negative entity or something that's trying to drain your energy. This instrument did mention a feeling of discomfort, but was nourished by this group and was able to diminish it. Had it not been for a random mishap, all would have been well, for you have learned to live in love and light and do not neglect to remember the one infinite creator. Don asks, then it was a fifth density entity that made this particular attack on the instrument today? That's correct. So dang, they're causing so much trouble with all their love and light that the fifth density leaders are coming after them. Yikes. Isn't this unusual that a fifth density would bother to do this rather than sending a fourth density servant? That's correct. Nearly all positive channels and groups may be lessened in their positivity or rendered quite useless by what we may call the temptations offered by the fourth density negative thought forms. They may suggest many distortions toward specific information, toward the aggrandization of the self, toward the flowering of the organization in some political, social, or fiscal way. So those negative entities might come in and try to sway you toward being more self-centered in a variety of ways. These distortions remove the focus from the one infinite source of love and light, of which we are all messengers, humble in knowing that we ourselves are but the tiniest portion of the Creator, a small part of a magnificent entirety of infinite intelligence. Don asks, is there something that the instrument can do or we could do for the instrument to eliminate the problem she has so continually experiences the cold feeling of these attacks? Ross says yes, but doesn't explain. Don says, can you tell me what we can do? And then Ross says, I wrote dang, so I'm interested to see what it says because I don't remember. You could cease in your attempts to be channels for the love and light of the one infinite creator. Dang. Double dang. So Ra just said, if you guys really want to keep Carla completely safe, you got to stop doing the work that you're doing. Which we know isn't going to happen. That's not going to happen, Ra. Don asks, have I missed anything now that we can do at all to aid the instrument during, before, or after a session, or at any time? The love and devotion of this group misses nothing. Be at peace. There is some toll for this work. The instrument embraces this, or we could not speak. Rest then in the peace and love, and do as you will, or as you wish, as you feel. Let there be an end to worry with this when this is accomplished. The great healer of distortions is love. Let's repeat that because it bears repeating. The great healer of distortions is love. Because they have such love for each other that none of this stuff is really gonna matter. So they should stop worrying about it. But that's easier said than done when you just said that this person or entity could have killed Carla. You know? Ross said stop worrying about it. All you need is love. But then you just said that this Orion Group fella was just going to kill Carla if you hadn't stepped in and told them what to do. That's a little hard to stop worrying about it. Don says, I have a question that I couldn't properly answer last night, and it was asked by Morris. I don't know who Morris is. It has to do with the vibrations of the densities. I understand that the first density is composed of core atomic vibrations that are in the red spectrum, second in the orange, etc. Am I to understand that the core vibrations of our planet are still in red and the second density beings are still in orange at the space-time, space, or space-time right now? And that each density, as it exists on our planet at this time has a different core vibration, or is this incorrect? It is precisely correct. Nice job, Don. Then, as the fourth density vibrations come in, this means that the planet can support entities of fourth density core vibrations. Will the planet then still be first density core vibration, or will there be second density entities on it with second density vibrations? And will there be third density entities with third density vibrations? And I said, yes, please answer this question, because that's something I keep wondering about too. Ra says, this will be the last query for this working. There is energy, but the distortions of the instrument suggest to us it would be well to shorten this working with your permission. Don says, yes, of course. Ra says, you must see the Earth as being 7 Earths. There is red, orange, yellow, and there will soon be a completed green color vibratory locus for fourth density entities, which they call Earth. During the fourth density experience, due to the lack of development of fourth density entities, the third density planetary sphere is not useful for habitation. Since the early fourth density entity will not know precisely how to maintain the illusion that fourth density cannot be seen or determined from any instrumentation available to a third density. I put a frowny face. I'm going to be real honest. I'm really tired of hearing the apocalyptic side of this whole moving up to the next density. And I've heard all of it at this point. I've heard that it's just going to change and we're not even going to really know it, but those of us that move up are going to... And then I've heard that the whole damn Earth is just going to be completely useless, and then we're going to start over again. It's like, and it runs the whole gamut in between those two things. So here it is again. The third density planetary sphere is not useful for habitation when it moves up to fourth density, which just makes me so utterly sad, because doesn't that mean that there's not going to be any that there wouldn't be any life as we know it on Earth anymore? Or do I just not know? Do I just not understand? Ra says then, thus the fourth density, the red, orange, and green energy nexi of your planet will be activated while the yellow is in potentiation, along with the blue and the indigo. So there's the red and the orange, which is first and second density, and the fourth density, the green, with yellow is a potential, along with there being the potential for the blue and the indigo, which it would be fifth and sixth. And that's pretty much where it ends for that session. Ra asks if there's anything else they want to ask, and they can say, Dawn asks what they ask every time. Can we do anything to be help Carla? And they just spent the whole session talking about that. So it's all good. So in summary, session 62 spends a lot of time with them talking about what is happening to Carla with the Orion Group and versus their group, and how they can fix it and what went wrong and all of that stuff. And then there's quite a bit of talk about the Orion Group and the service to self and the way that they operate. And then at the very end of the session, Dawn asks about the vibrations and colors of the different densities. And then we get the terrible, horrible information that the third density isn't going to be habitable when it moves into fourth density. Which I still don't really understand what that even means. But I guess, at some point here, it seems perhaps sooner than later, although our sense of time is not necessarily the way that other entities are going to think of time, because time doesn't really exist. At some point, we're going to find out exactly what it means to move up to the next density, the next dimension, whether you're thinking that that's fourth density or fifth density or what have you. I'm just hoping that it's not going to be awful and traumatic. If we're moving up to the density of love, can't we move up to the density of love with love? Can we not have it turn into a shit show? I don't know. I guess at some point we're gonna find out. Thank you for watching this video. Please don't forget to like and subscribe if you haven't already. There are the other sessions from this volume that have come out before. That's sessions 57 through 61. And there's the whole entire series of videos from the volume 1 of this book. So check them out if you haven't already. Might I suggest watching the Raw Contact Volume 2 recap and introduction video if this is new material to you, as I go over how I even got involved in all this raw stuff and a little bit of why we're doing this. I would very much appreciate it if people put some comments in here so that we can have a discussion about this information, because it is very complicated. It is very dense, no pun intended, and it's much easier to learn this and understand it when we talk about it together. So comment, share if you want to. It's all very much appreciated. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you later. Hopefully not in another 2 months. Bye!